welcome back to another XR Labs podcast. We're here with two very special guests, two dear friends of mine who I've been seeing grow in the industry for the last year or two. We have here Daniel and we have Tim Jackson.
Hey.
Daniel. How do you pronounce your last name, please?
Dyboski-Bryant.
Dyboski. Okay, cool. Welcome. These folks are from the Education in VR user group and study group. I've seen you guys do Altspace events, countless hours of education using virtual reality as your main engine. And I just want to tell the world what you guys been doing because I think it's very extraordinary. So please, Daniel, tell us how you began this amazing project.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, first of all, Paul. EducatorsinVR started almost exactly 2 years ago on a bit of a whim. That I was on a member of various Facebook groups talking about VR and education, but social VR was coming along, and I thought, why not actually meet in VR? Why not, instead of being in Facebook, why not get into VR and meet there? So did that. And at that event, I met my co-founder, Laurel van Vossen, who's amazing. And it snowballed from one event a month to one every 2 weeks, one every week. Now we do, I think, 4, 5, 6 events every week. We do events on different platforms. And in the course of that, we developed a community, a global community of about 2,500 members of educators, teachers, trainers, students as well, researchers. And one of our most prolific members is Tim here. We met about a year ago.
It was January, February 2019.
That's right.
So it's about 18 months.
Yeah. Tim was leading one of our tracks until he got busy with his own projects there. And yeah, we've developed a number of different kind of special interest groups, if you like, or teams in Altspace. We are almost entirely volunteer driven, which is fascinating, and the amount of passion you get. You'll hear from Tim shortly about how he feels about that. But we feel really fortunate to be riding this wave at this time with this amazing community and meeting people like yourself as well, Paul. But over to Tim.
Definitely. So please tell us, Tim, how you started this and what kind of technical knowledge, educational background do you have? We would love to know how you got involved.
Okay, well, it's great to meet you, Paul. We've been talking for some time now, and it's been really nice to get to know you and to get to know the group. And it's great to be here this evening and being able to chat to you. Both Daniel and I are educators. We've been in the industry for a long time. I'm coming up to nearly 19 years of being in my current place, which is Broadstairs College, which is based in Kent in the United Kingdom. And I teach computing, and I've been teaching computing for that 19 years. I teach at advanced A-level and undergraduate level. So I've got a fairly sound technical background and the educational background to back that up as well. I think what's interesting with educational establishments is that when you try to introduce something that's new and radical, it's not that you get resistance. It's more of a case of, well, I don't know how to do that. So do I really need to do it? So let's not bother. And it then takes somebody with a bit of passion and a bit of guts and a little bit of nagging who's prepared to say, well, come on, let's do something with this. So we've now built our own purpose-built games lab. We've built our own purpose-built VR lab. And one of the things we're doing or starting to do now is use that virtual reality space to develop the soft skills of learners, in particular learners who struggle with soft skills in their day-to-day life. So kids with anxiety issues, kids who perhaps haven't had regular schooling like everybody else. We're now able to use VR. And in fact, the NHS in the UK has done a lot of research on the use of VR with trauma. And we've been able to tap into some of that research, and we're starting to use that at college level. And I think we're one of the very first in the UK to be able to do this. And it's really radical and it's really exciting. Educators in VR was just a part of that. I met Daniel about 18 months ago by chance, which was amazing. And we started chatting and we started realizing how much we had in common and how much passion we had for VR. And it kind of fitted together with the ideas that I had at the college. And it kind of gelled, and I got more and more involved and loved every single minute of it. And although I'm being pulled to one side with some projects I'm working on at the moment, I'm still in touch with Educators in VR, and the work they're doing is just immense. And the impact that they're having on global education now, I think, is being vastly underestimated. And I think a lot of people need to look at Educators in VR and say, hey, what are these guys actually doing? And then suddenly you'll realize that it's really pioneering stuff on a global scale that these guys are pushing out right now.
I hear you. Thank you for all that. Yeah, it's amazing. So this is more of a question for Daniel. So how many members do you guys have currently?
Well, just pure numbers, we have about 2,500. Like with any membership, some of them are more or less active. But I would say that the ratio of active members is higher than average. And the range of active members, it is literally, it's not predominantly one area. We have members from Asia Pacific, from Australia, New Zealand, from South America. We have members from African countries, from Europe. It is really a global phenomenon. Anybody who can get headsets, who's in education, if they search, if you know, as you do now, you go online, who else is doing this Facebook group, they find us. And when they find us, they're part of the conversation immediately. They're part of the community immediately. And it's like they don't feel alone. And then they're sharing what they're doing. And it's beautiful because so many people are grassroots and they're all passionate and they're all sharing. And hey, I've got this idea. Suddenly somebody jumps in, a new project is born. And that's just like on a daily, weekly basis. People are meeting, and that's what we set out to do, to meet, share, and collaborate. And when you get, and we also have members from like Microsoft and HTC. It's not only grassroots. We have organizations, respectable organizations, big, innovative groups. It seems to be a bit of a melting pot, and that's the beauty of it. When you put passionate people together and let them get on with it, that's a thriving community. And to just witness the development of that over 18 months has been absolute blessing. One of the best things I've done in my life.
That's great to hear. Speaking of, how it proceeded and all that, how did the virus pandemic affect this? Because it's obvious to us in the industry that the virus changed everything for everyone,
Right.
And
yeah.
It was almost like a green light for everyone in the industry to let's go, let's start developing, let's get this online, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I feel that we never talk about the challenges of that to us as content creators. How was that for you as a user, as a group, head, and how was that for you, Tim, as an educator? How did it affect you?
So I'd love to hear what Tim's going to say about this, because I think our experiences had some similarities, but being quite different as well. I'll keep my bit short because I'm curious about what Tim's going to say. Back in February of this year, Educators in VR, with Tim on board, we ran the 2020 Educators in VR International Summit, which was a 6-day event fully in VR, across different platforms. It was volunteer driven. It was a bit crazy thinking back to want to do it so long and so many hours, but we did it, and it came off really well. It was a great event in its own right. But the very next week, of course, coronavirus was in the news around the world, shutting down events left, right, and center. So after this week, we thought we would have a bit of time to relax and sleep and catch up on some rest. We had big companies calling us up saying, how did you do that? Our event's being shutting down. Can you help us? So suddenly we had all of this demand. People had seen an example of what can be done, just right at a time when it was needed. And yeah, we got a lot of requests for how do you do this? Can you help us? and we got involved in running some projects. So from Educators in VR, we pivoted slightly towards event production, and that's kind of what we've been concentrating on for, let's say, the last 6 months. But we're also coming out of that a little bit, where we've made a lot of experience, we've gained a lot of experience in that, and we're reevaluating again. I know there is a lot of need for virtual events and conferences, but we're trying to learn from what works and what doesn't work and see. And my takeaway is actually less is more. Smaller can give you a lot more value. And I'll leave it there for now, but I want to hear, because Tim went a different route. He got pulled in his direction. So take it away.
I think the first thing that is worth mentioning is that it was by accident what happened, because originally the very first, I mean, just putting it in perspective, the Educators in VR International Summit that was in February 2020 was the first ever summit being held completely in virtual reality. No one else had done that before. Now, what Daniel hasn't said, and really he ought to take a lot of credit for this, that took months of planning. Months and months of planning. And originally we were going to have that conference in, I think it was July, August. And then it got moved to around about November. But because it was so big and there was so much going on, we actually talked about it, if you remember, Daniel. And I said, well, look, why don't we go for the February break, which is middle of February, because that will free up a lot of teachers to attend and volunteer. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it took place in February 2020. And had it taken place any earlier, like in the July, like in the November, I don't think it would have had the same impact it had by taking place in the February, because, as Daniel said, the coronavirus was starting to circulate in January. It started to have an impact in February and effectively shut the UK down in March. And at that point, all the schools and colleges were going, oh my God, what do we do now? And some people said, okay, well, let's do things by email. Let's physically send things out to students. And then you got some crazy guy called Tim who says, hey, why don't we do it in VR? Because we've just done this amazing event as part of Educators in VR for a whole week, 6 days across every single time zone you could think of. And we were having speakers one after the other from different parts of the world. Crazy, but it worked and it was amazing. Why don't we put our teaching into VR and see what happens? So we got the notification on the Friday that from the following Monday we were going to be in lockdown. So that whole weekend I was in Altspace VR starting to create environments based on templates that Educators in VR had created, and I started running classes from the following Monday. And that then carried on for 4 months.
What type of classes were you teaching?
Sorry?
What type of classes?
Well, I mean, it was all anything computing related. So anything from data networks to security, games design. I think we were just starting to teach robotics as well. So there were some challenges with that, but certainly, do you know there's two things that really impressed me the most. The first thing was the students' willingness to adapt. And they just jumped straight in with both feet and they went, hey, we love this. And attendance went up to nearly 100%.
No way.
Do you know why? Because they could lie in bed with a headset or with a laptop, engage completely and not have to move a muscle. Now, I'm not saying they're lazy. I'm just saying it was more convenient.
Convenient. Yeah.
More convenient. And attendance went through the roof.
Yeah.
And the second thing was that they wanted more of it. I actually had one guy who I said, right, okay, guys, we're coming to the end of these sessions. We're going to be breaking out of VR now. We're coming into June. You've got your assignments to be getting on with. And one lad said to me out loud, he said, do you know, I'm going to really miss being in VR. And he said, and I never thought I would ever say that. And he said, but I'm going to miss it. And it was because of the social camaraderie that took place during a very, very difficult time for everybody. And everyone's mental health took a real hit. But I firmly believe that because of those sessions we were running for those 4 months, the students were able to keep on the straight and narrow. They were staying focused. And their grade profile at the end of the year, and I did this as a statistical analysis, the grade profile of all their grades at the end of the year were as good, if not better, than the grade profile the previous year under normal circumstances.
That's really interesting.
That says it all, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Danny, you turned. We were talking before this interview, you know, with our XR Labs' co-founders, Carla and Anna, and we were discussing, like, you know, the potential of all this to really reshape humanity and reshape our society. And you termed something really cool that I thought that the next generation, they're gonna. It was like a term, spatially aware or spatial generation.
Spatial natives.
What?
Spatial natives.
Spatial native. That was really, that stuck in my mind, man.
That's
it's
cool.
Like,
that's good.
Imagine in the future, you know, it's, I don't know. I thought that was really cool. I feel, let me propose this before we continue. How about, you know, now that we've had this background of how you guys have started this amazing movement, let's try to, you know, we have a WebXR engine a platform, I mean, that we're building up. And we wanna just bring together educators, and we wanna have you guys. Maybe let's start doing some more podcasts and start talking about all these educational efforts that, you know, that we're all doing. And keep that in mind. You know, we're gonna talk later with South Florida Video Game Association, and we're doing stuff here with Magic Leap, and we're working with a lot of great people and passionate people who want to really change things for the better. You know, and I think that that's really important to note, that what you guys are doing is leading edge. You guys actually care about your communities. You guys want to engage in these type of things. So I think it would be great. But let's switch gears again, because I don't want to just talk about all that like right now. Let's like, so you guys.
Can I just say a word about spatial natives really quickly?
Of course, please. I wanted to.
I think one of the reasons, obviously, it links in with digital natives, right? The term where young people are born with digital reality and they don't question it. The spatial reality is obviously the next step. But if you think about it, our minds are spatial. We are all, by birth, spatial beings. Like, we have spatial perception already, which this technology, when I've seen a lot of educational technology come and go, and I wasn't particularly excited by a lot of it. When I put my first headset on, something different happened. I was been thinking a lot about it, and I think it's because you're actually not, with a headset on, it's almost as if the technology fades into the background. You're dealing directly with an experience. If you're on a laptop, on a tablet, on a screen on the wall, you're still looking at the technology. With a headset on, you're experiencing digital reality.
You're immersed in it, yeah.
Right, and the spatial native it taps into something that we already are. It's like our innate nature to be spatial. And the fact that technology is now spatial, that's, for me, a magic moment.
Really. And how do, for example, Tim, how do you envision, what type of courses could you guys teach that really uses spatial technology, like, you know, for example, chemistry, or how have you guys noticed that for visual learners, for spatial learners, has benefited them?
Well, as I said, you know, the students were on board straight away. But what was interesting was the very first, because what I did before I took them into lessons, formal lessons, I did a couple of acclimatization sessions. And it was a little bit like, just go in and bounce off the walls, just do what you want. And I ran 2 20-minute sessions, and all they did was to jump everywhere. They would climb up the mountains, go up the trees, go into the sea, do everything that you wouldn't want them to do in a lesson, but just to get it out of their system. Because once they got it out of their system, it kind of became, oh yeah, well, I've done that now. All right, what are we here to do? You know, and it was,
I think point.
A lot of educators make the mistake of taking someone into a new technology for the first time and expecting them to comply straight away. But actually what you want them to do is to play, become familiar, become spatially aware, and then you can start to educate them. And it doesn't really matter what the subject is, because you can bring in all sorts of different assets in front of them, whether it be chemistry, whether it be automotive, whether it be computing. And say, hey, let's explore this a little bit further. Let's bring something in front of you that you can have a look at. So, for example, one of the great platforms we used was the Engage platform, and they've got some amazing assets, and one of which was on Mars and the Mars Discovery Probe. and it was a fully working probe that you could press buttons on, and it would be informative, and it would do things and play little videos. And the students were absolutely mesmerized by this for about half an hour. And then you could then say, right, okay, guys, let's move on to the next thing. So those assets are incredibly important, because I think it allows them to visualize, and as Daniel was saying, experience the learning. This is not just, you know, what you don't want to do, Paul, is to take a classroom environment where you stood up in front of the students writing on the board and put that into VR, because that's the last thing you want to do, because all you're doing is the same old thing regurgitating year after year. No, doesn't work. What you want to do is to say, right, yes, I need to instruct you. Yes, there's information I need to give you, but let's do it in a really fun, informative and intuitive, experiential way. Let's start using some assets, you know?
There's a skill in there that, because a lot of people ask, you know, can you teach everything in VR, or is everything appropriate in VR? I don't believe it is.
No, not everything.
But I think if you sit down with an expert educator in their subject, say maths, say history, and then you consider the subject as a whole and think, well, what part of that can students experience, or how can they experience maths? Which might sound a bit abstract. But if you get some smart brains together and consider, how could we experience history rather than reading about it, rather than watching a video about it? How could we experience this? That's the starting point.
It's almost like it's gamification of it.
Yeah,
there's an element of that, but for example, the Second World War. How could you experience the Second World War? It's a key point in our history. Most curriculums cover this to some degree. You could create a world with a short scenario, like the beginning, imagine the first day of the war, and reliving that in history, and knowing this is going to last 5 or 6 years now, or the last day of the war. Imagine creating a scenario where your learners, you're taking them in, the whole world has just experienced 5 years of war, and now you're in New York Central Square, everybody's running the streets, the war is over, the war is over. Imagine just having that experience, just that, as a reference point for the Second World War, and feeling it viscerally. Like,
interesting you say that, Daniel. There is an app, sorry to interrupt you, there is an app that allows a VR user to sit in, I think it's a Lancaster bomber during a dam buster raid, and you've got all the ack and the flak coming at you, and you've got that almost immersive experience of crouching and feeling quite worried about it.
Like, you know, you're actually living out the experience rather than learning it, which I think is
it's experiential.
That will never make books redundant. That will never make good videos redundant. What it does, it adds another layer.
Enhances.
And so you're creating, and because it's spatial, you remember things differently as well. You recall it in a much more real way. Very short story. My wife bought us a holiday on Gran Canaria. We rented a mobile home. But the week before, I went into Google Earth VR and I researched Gran Canaria in VR. And then we went there in real life. And I had memories in my mind of this place spatially that my wife had never seen before. And I knew what was coming around this corner because I'd visited it in VR. So you can form much more visceral spatial memories that way. So it starts with experience, considering what experiences you can have that would enhance learning and support.
Definitely. Well, guys, we're reaching the top of the hour, and I know that we're all over the world, and we want to honor your time and space. But
thank you.
Let's continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Can I offer one more term to throw into the mix? We're talking about spatial natives. Can we throw in there spatial teaching?
I love that.
Spatial teaching experts. That's where I think we're going with this. And that's one of the projects I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Lovely.
That's great. Let's continue
the
good work, guys. We have today South Florida Video Game Association. They're having a meeting as well with Magic Leap, ILMB Labs, which works with LucasArts. So we're gonna have a great meeting with all the South Florida family and now the UK family and sorry, Daniel, where do you live?
Wales. UK.
Wales, UK as well. The UK family in the house today here in Miami, and we'll continue talking there, and hopefully we'll start spatially working and teaching.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks a lot.